morning, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. I decided to do a video outside today because it's so beautiful out here. It's warm, the sun's out, but it's not too hot. So I'm here with Angelita and Clucky. You may hear them in the background doing their thing, growling at each other. But I wanted to take this time and make a video because I was thinking about this yesterday. And I talk a lot about unity in my videos. And the other day, I was just kind of, at home, and I was thinking, why is it so hard for us to find unity? Why is it so hard for people that are different to come together? And one thing that I kept thinking about was a lot of the news, a lot of social media, and a lot of the forms that we obtain our information, right? And let's say that you're a conservative individual. You may tend to watch news that is more conservative. You may tend to read newspapers that have a more conservative view. And let's say you're liberal, you're doing the same thing. You're going to hear what you want to hear. So you go to those news stations that are more liberal, those newspapers that are more liberal, etc. So, hey, quiet guys, quiet. So I thought to myself, I said, okay, so if the conservative individuals are going and getting a lot of this more conservative views on things, I said, well, what are they being exposed to? Because most of you know, putting a label on something is just, it's not good because you're already kind of blocking it in. If I had to say, or think of a way to express myself, I would say that I'm open-minded. I like to look at the different views that are out there, whether they agree with my views or not. But then I said, well, what kind of news do you listen to? What kind of newspapers do I read? And a lot of the things that I read do tend to be more liberal, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I'm viewing these things, I do notice that the Latino community is portrayed in a certain way. We're hearing a lot of those positive stories. We're hearing a lot of those DACA dreamer inspirational stories on these more liberal newscasts, which is fantastic. I mean, I love listening to those because I love to see how other people are like me, how other people have succeeded in this country despite their background. But then I said, well, Carolina, how the heck are you going to understand other people's views? How are you going to unite with other people unless you listen to what they're listening to and understand where they're coming from? So what did I do? I decided to watch some very conservative news, read some very conservative newspapers. I did that all of last week. And what I found was amazing. Okay. And what I found was that a lot of the stories that they're being showed is not about when the minority community succeeds. They are not focusing on DACA or Dreamer Latinos that have done well. A lot of what that community is being shown are just things that are completely opposite of that. They're being shown the Latinos that have committed crimes, the negative side of all of that, not just with Latinos, but with the minority community. So I was like, okay, let me take a step back. I'm in my own little bubble here watching all these wonderful news about me and my community in this bubble, and I'm wondering why the people in this bubble don't understand me. So I moved myself to this bubble so that I could really hear what they're hearing. And if I was constantly listening to all of this, there's no way that I would look at people like me, the Latino community or the minority community, and think positive thoughts. It's very hard to do that. It's hard to do that when you're bombarded with all the negative things of those communities. So I was like, okay, that's not good. It's not good that in one bubble, a certain community or certain communities are targeted and talked about in a negative light, and that in another bubble they're being viewed as more as more of a positive, and we're only telling the good stories. There's inconsistencies. But then I took a even further step back and I said, well, how perfect is that? It's so perfect because it keeps people divided. It keeps these people with this particular very narrow mentality, even though we think, oh, we're so open-minded. We're not, because we're not looking over here to see what's really going on. Why does my neighbor think in such a way? Why doesn't he or she think how I think? Well, let's look at the things that we're listening to. Let's look at the people we're surrounding ourselves with. Okay? So I'll tell you the truth. Watching the news, or reading those newspapers where a lot of it talks about how my community is a community of crime, is a community of fear. That did not make me feel good. So at first I watched it. I said, oh, I started cringing. I said, I can't watch this. I'm like, this is so harmful. I can't watch it. So I changed it. But then I said, no, you have to listen to what is going on and why different people are viewing you and your community in that light. So I did it and I watched it, and it was really hard to watch. It was really tough to watch. But I think also that it's so interesting that news, that media can put out the information in such a way, and we think we're obtaining great information, and we think that by sharing it we're doing something good, and we may be under a certain context, but also we continue that narrative of my side is right, no, my side is right kind of thing. We continue with that mentality. And I just wanted to tell you about my week experiment of it, because I do question that. I'm like, why is it, Bucky, shush, shush, shush. I'm like, why the heck is it so hard for people to understand that my community means well? My community wants to inspire and unite the other community. Why is it so hard for people to see that? Why did I get hate mail last week, right? But I had to put myself in the other arena and listen to the communication that different groups of people were getting. So I say all that to just kind of get to the bottom of this and summarize it by saying that, we can't always just look at one side of the story and think that that's the only right side. I actually think that all sides have little bits of truth, and they also have little bits of exaggeration. And those little bits add up to some huge amounts. And it helps with the division of communities. So I want to give you this kind of challenge to not just listen to what you typically listen to. Go on something different. Go get your information from a different source, just to see what the big deal is, why other people have different views than you. Don't just assume that this is me, this is the correct information, anything else is false, anything else I'm going to, defend myself against. That's not what we want to do. I think what we want to do is, it's time to take a step back from it and to allow ourselves to get information from different sources, and don't be swayed. Don't be easily swayed by what you're listening to, whether it's this group or that group or the one there or the whatever. I don't care what group it is. We need to allow ourselves to really be more open-minded and understand why different community members are seeing things differently than us. Unity is something that I truly believe is possible. It is very possible. I do also believe that the news media and social media and just information, the information we obtain, a lot of the time is biased, and it doesn't give us the full story. We need the full story. We need the facts. We need the good. We need the bad to come to an agreement. Because when you really think about it, I'll use immigration as an example. People like me who have had DACA, who have been dreamers, who want to do well in our community, who do these things. It's hard for us to understand why others won't accept our community, why others fear our community, okay? But the reality is that in any community, there is good and there is not so good. In every community, there are things we need to protect ourselves against. And in every community, there are wonderful people who defend and who want to unite others. So having a conversation with people that are different than you is so important, because you get different views on things. And I think that if we can start listening to people that are different from us, that have different views, that is opening the door for some true unity. And you won't agree at first, trust me, because I have had conversations with people that are very different than me, and I push the group to have these tough conversations, because you'll find that once you get past the first kind of friction to these conversations, you've got a lot in common. You have a lot in common with these people, but at first you won't realize it, because you're both kind of on your separate sides, and you're like, yeah, oh, that person's kind of weird, or no, that person's kind of weird. But if you literally just sit down and talk to these people, and you get past a couple of minutes of disagreements, you'll get to agreements. And it is really wonderful. So my challenge that I had last week with listening to some of these different news media and different newspapers was actually a really great experience, because it allowed me to see why some people fear my community, why some people tend to judge my community. If I was being bombarded with some negative stories and very fearful stories of other people, it would be very easy for me to be fearful. So I'm not saying this to defend anyone. I'm saying this so that we understand that we're all getting information that is very one-sided. It's very hard, unless you purposefully go out there and get information from different areas. It's very hard to get something that's unbiased these days, and I think we all know that. So anyway, I did that challenge last week, and I challenge you this week to do that, to go out of your way and get information from different areas, so that you can understand why people have different views, why they have those different views. I think it's absolutely amazing, and I think it's where unity can begin. So I am going to go off and enjoy my day, but I just wanted to do a quick video about that. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will be in contact soon. Bye!